Imagine yourself looking out at the vast sea before you. You reach down and you put a hand into the water and you scoop it up towards you. Immediately the water starts leaking through your fingers until the hand is empty. That water is a man's life. From birth to death, it is always slipping through our hands until it is gone, along with all that you hold dear in this world.
I'm Luke, and what's the point anyway? I believe it's to follow the way, but let's see what others think. I hope you'll enjoy these conversations as we explore this question together. This is part 2 of my conversation with Josh Kennedy and Tomi Johnston. Check last week's episode for part 1 of the discussion in case you haven't already heard it.
But I think we're all in a privileged position. You are in a privileged position.
Absolutely.
Tomi certainly is, but that's not to suggest that you haven't had challenges in life, and they're all differing. And back to the sort of loop it back to the start. I think we're all shaped by life experiences, and our worldview is shaped by that. And I think I agree with Tomi that we're all sort of it's not linear. We're all figuring it out and through the ups and downs, and we're what we think today will probably be different to what we think in a decade's time, and it'd be interesting to sort of loop back in and listen to it. Maybe we'd be cringing. Maybe we think, we were a spot on the money.
The toughest thing for me, particularly with you two in particular, we have a lot of robust discussion, right? And the thing that I think particularly Luke and I, what gets lost is, I think our default, Luke, is to argue a lot, and it is to get into really heated discussions at times, which somewhat feels default, right? And I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Is that discussions or message apps? And that maybe we can go back to culture.
Oh, well, I just think message apps in particular, it's got to such levels where, like, I think about it a lot. Like, I'll think about it offline. I'll think about it throughout the day. Like, but ultimately, I think what gets lost is it's actually coming from a really good place. From, and I know it is from you as well. But again, I don't want to put words in your mouth. But the thing that like our friendship, and the thing that I've gotten most out of it in particular is, I think you're a friend that taught me to continue to ask questions and continue to be curious and to investigate. I honestly and truly mean that. I think I've said that a bit, and I think coming back to the pod, sometimes I find it's through us hashing things out and really like banding around things where we really get the gold. And I think where I find I can really plant my flag after 2 hours of discussion, where I feel like we've thrashed out something to a point where I'm clear on it. I'm more clear than I ever was. My point is that particularly with the podcast, is I feel like you could implement that into your interview style. And I think, again, it's really tough because it may be misconstrued as really combative and aggressive. But ultimately, the intentions are sound and coming from a place of good intention, which is, hey, I know that we don't have the answers to this, but I think if we actually thrash this out, I reckon we're going to be better for it. And if that means we're going to say some unpleasant things along the way, well, hey, I'm happy to do that if you are. Because if we've got the same intention here, which is to come out the other side knowing a little bit more than what we did, I think that's a win. I think it's really hard, and I think what I struggled with is which I think is commendable. But finding this new realm of trying to find common ground with people is where that conflicts a little bit with me, because I know through our relationship, a lot of the gold comes through those, as I said, those combative discussions. So I'm interested to see how that sits with you and whether or not you think there's anything in that, or whether you think you'd rather revert back to the status quo.
So I know we've spoken about it, but Vic sends me these memes all the time now, and she's convinced that I have ADHD, and I probably do. I've never been diagnosed with it. I don't go to doctors or anything, as you know. But there was a funny meme that I saw this week, and it was like ADHD people get into arguments just to get their dopamine hit. So for me, there's an element of that. My natural state is I enjoy arguing, and I'm highly, why? It's an exercising of the brain, one, and two, it's one of the best ways that I either further solidify my position or break it. Right.
You're also a natural outlier. Like, you love to be
contrarian.
Correct.
Yeah. Which I think, generally speaking, is the correct position to be. I think.
I'll tell you how you argue, and again, don't take this the wrong way, because I tend to be the same. I think your default position in any argument is, I'm right, and my actual challenge here is to convince the other person as to why they're wrong, and get them closer and align with where I currently sit. That's your default, and then you work from there.
Yeah, it's probably an accurate description of me in times past. I reckon you'll see less of it. I reckon you've seen less of it in recent times, and you'll see less and less. With time, I
do like that version, though, personally.
Yeah. Puts off a few people as well, but...
Yeah, but that's okay. I think you have to see through that and look at the intention behind it.
Mm. So,
I think that in doing that, he's realised he's not in a position of certainty.
Agreed. Hey, also, let's just call it truth. If we're in the pursuit of truth, no point finding common ground, If we're going to find common ground, we're just going to be, there's no evolution. There's no creativity. I think we're at a bit of a standstill. I think it's the default of, hey, I'm fixed on this position until you can convince me otherwise, is a really, really sound approach. And I think that's what's actually held you in good stead and got you to this point. I think I'd double down on that, personally.
Mm. Well, then, this is a question of the podcast, but also generally speaking, we go, what's the point, right? So is the point, and you guys miss this, I've sort of shifted a few things.
As you do.
Yeah. No, but a few things have happened. I think I came to faith sort of 3 years ago, and then I've had kids and naturally got older. I think I've almost worn out my energy for constant debates and arguing now. And I think you already have started to see that. If I got someone that disagrees with me now, I'm more likely than not to say, all good. You have your view and I've got mine. I think I've been right. I think I've been wrong on a lot, right? But I think I've been right on a lot of things, maybe over the last decade. And I haven't convinced many people of... my approach has been fairly unsuccessful in terms of convincing adversaries in debates that I'm right and that they're wrong.
Yeah, my view on that is that's not a you problem. That's the culture that we live in today, and that's my problem.
Correct. It is, right?
Nah, it is. It is, Josh.
No, it is, yeah, because we're just everything's more polarized.
Yeah.
There's the left and there's the right. And Christians are worse than anyone at this. That they have the truth and everyone else is perishing and has nothing, right? So this is how I've shifted. I probably thought when I first launched the podcast. I'm thinking more it's a pursuit of truth, right? And if it's a pursuit of truth, then your answer is the right one. I'm better off bringing all sorts of people and hashing it out. What I think I've shifted it to, and this is through conversations that I've had, it's through my own sort of prayer and my own revelation in my life, is I think I could play a really crucial role in this world in advancing relationships and having better conversations, and which naturally leads to truth. But I think the point...
No. I disagree with that.
What?
Naturally leads to truth.
It's more likely to lead to truth, right?
Well, if you've got a stronger relationship, you can have a more robust
100%.
discussion.
Right.
If you're just getting a different guest on every time and having a common ground and hearing and listening, and to put it simply, if your podcast, my understanding was that it was the search for truth.
I think that's what it started at.
That's what it started as.
That's what it is.
But after listening to it, I'm more inclined to think that no one knows the truth. Maybe there is not one truth. That's what I got from the guests. And in addition to that, I'm less certain of what your truth was than what it was a year ago. And I think that's because you have also softened anyway. So therefore the truth, in my eyes, I'm more inclined to think there's not just one cold, hard truth.
Well, I think the reality is, and I'll push back on that entirely, is that what's the point anyway of our life? It's this postmodern idea that everyone can have their own truth is not really true, right? There either is a point, and that point is the truth, and we might articulate it in different ways, right? Everyone might have the way that they explain it, which is the same, a different version of the same truth. But there can't be multiple truths, because if there's multiple truths, then there is no point anyway, right?
Why not? I think there can be multiple truths and still be a point.
Well, then, no, there can't. Because if there's no overarching point of our human existence on this earth, then the default answer is that the point is whatever anyone wants it to be.
But could it not be like, if there's one God, as you believe him,
yeah,
and we're all children of God?
I don't believe that.
I'm just offering up another... I'm
Yeah.
not asking what you believe.
Yeah.
We're all children of God with our own stories.
Yeah.
Our own lives, our own experiences. And in that, our own truths.
Mm-hmm.
But we all are part of God's kingdom and end up at the same place. I don't know.
Which would mean that overarching God, whatever name we want to place on that God, because we can talk in sort of secular terms for the point of this hypothetical, does not have a plan. Right? There is no purpose that's put there. So
his plan is love. Maybe his plan is...
Well, then the point anyway of anyone that answers it must be some articulation of love, if that is this creator God point. That's my point. You either have, because there are views on this. There's sort of a what is it? I think it's a deist view that there's a view, and it's sort of popular around like the 1800s, that this world was created by a higher power. But that higher power is almost like it set a clock. It wound it up and it just let the world go as it goes. So there's a belief in, yes, there is a higher power, but that higher power has no involvement in the earth, doesn't have a will for how man will live, does not have an overarching plan. Therefore, the answer is, what's the point in it is whatever every million different people give is their point. Yeah, it's their point. That's it. They live it. One's is just domineering success at all costs, and they'll collect all the resources and own the most important assets and not have many people that actually like them. And others will be love and relationships, and that will come, generally speaking, at the detriment of their ability to gather resources and compete against ruthless adversaries who are more willing to do things that they're not to collect those resources, but they'll have some really strong and loving relationships. There'll be completely nihilistic people that are like, this brutal world that I'm in is meaningless and pointless and I have no reason for being here, so I'm just going to have drugs and alcohol and live out my days until I die because it means nothing. Now, there are three different what's the point is anyway answers, and they're all true because you're in a world where there is no overarching point. So where I push back is saying that if there is an overarching point, then we as individuals within this world don't get the right to make up our version of it.
But that's exactly what we're doing now.
Well, I'm still asking the question, what's the point is anyway?
But you're making up your version of it.
Yeah, but mine has a why.
But everyone's has a why.
What's your why? Why are relationships important? Why is the whole point of life relationship?
Because I feel it. It's just my gut feeling, my instinct.
All right.
I don't know.
What do you think, Tom?
Yeah,
I mean, what you're saying is right, Luke, but that's not what you're getting out of the. That's not what I'm getting out of the pot.
yeah, and that's where I go back to is.
And I'm sort of what I get out of the pod is that we've all got our own sort of what's the point anyway, based off life experience, whether it's because you grow plants and gardens and you do that, or because you were born gay and I thought I said to you, I thought you missed the most integral question as to why was Stephen? Why
He didn't think he was born gay. He said he
wasn't. I think he was so humble. He was super humble, Stephen, in his view. But everything that he said suggested that he had no choice in that.
Yeah, he certainly
It was born that way. It was, from me, it was clear as day that he was born that way.
He was also clear that he's not dogmatic on that, and that there are
because he's a super humble guy.
Yeah,
but I don't know. For me, it was clear as day, and I think whether he was born that way or turned that way, whatever, there's still got to be a why, and that wasn't touched on.
Well, he doesn't believe that Yahweh, the creator God of the Hebrew Bible, is the creator. So the Bible.
But how could you? What do you mean?
Well, so his view on what's the point anyway, as we dug into it, is he doesn't have a.
But how could he?
Could he what?
How could he have your same view given everything he's been through?
Well, there's plenty of. I mean, there's there'd be millions of people that are homosexual, whether they believe they're born that way, born with certain tendencies that manifested in that become Christians, like heaps. So that's the answer to how could he. But his answer on why, he doesn't have his answer on is, broadly speaking, was I don't know. And he's comfortable with I don't know. So he's not going to be able to have an answer on why he was born that way. Because he doesn't have a belief in a specific higher power that he has received revelation from. So the answer would have to be, I don't know.
Yeah, I think there was a bit.
Well, what's your answer on it?
Hey, well, I don't think you touched on it in the pod. I don't think you got into it. Like, he grew up, his father was a pastor, grew up in the Christian church, wanted to believe with everything he had, went to, what is it called when you go to the exorcisms and did all that sort of stuff. Like, he was desperate to in air quotes, sort of fix himself.
Mm.
Surely he's sitting there going, what? Like, why? And that question was never brought up. And I don't know the answer. Like, how can you answer that question? Like,
What do you think? Why do you think some people are born gay?
well, I don't know. That's why I'm, I think in all the interpretations, something's lost in translation. And so I just do what I think, in my understanding, in my interpretations, is the right thing.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the way you live.
In terms of the way of I see things and the way I live, yeah.
Based on just gut?
No, I grew up with, Catholic, Christian sort of values.
Do you believe in that?
I believe in them to an extent. I would love to believe with all my heart. But there's just those sort of questions where it just, I hit a roadblock and I'm like what? Like that, like Stephen, for example.
Well, I think I got into it with Stephen and sort of gave my perspective. And my answer is that we make this big deal of homosexuality that it shouldn't be.
Like, my question is like, is that the deal? Like, Stephen's a homosexual. So what?
So what?
Can we move on? Like that's my take on it.
Yeah, Luke's take on it 24 months ago, mate, 2 years ago was,
I know.
He's going to hell. He's destined for hell. So you're telling me that, and you were adamant, and you were black and white. That's what the Bible says. That's what it is. It's no grey. There's no room for interpretation. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So my answer to that is, well, how can that be on that sense?
How can what be that? Yeah, but I don't agree with that now.
Exactly.
But I mean,
But that's true to form for Luke, though.
Yeah,
Establish that.
Do I need to? I mean, is it a good thing or a bad thing that I'm not fixed to old positions? Isn't advancing your view on things?
I think it's very, very important. But certainly at that time, there was no advancing positions. You were set in stone.
Yeah, and I humbly admit that I was totally wrong.
Okay.
And the more I can humbly admit that I've been totally wrong, the better a representative of God's kingdom on earth I'm going to be.
To go through that, though, and to circle back, I find the best way to do that is to really get into the weeds. And if that means robust conversation that's challenging and somewhat combative, I think that's served you really well, to be perfectly frank.
Mm.
And all credit to, and I double down on that personally. I know personally that, our heated discussions have made me question, think, analyse, investigate things more than I ever would with a cordial conversation, one that's finding common ground.
Mm.
And I think only then am I truly evolved and then come out the other side planting a flag one way or the other. And sometimes I get worried that you losing that. And hearing you say that, if people disagree with me these days, I'm probably more just inclined to let it go. Like, I just don't think that's you personally. And it concerns me if that's the case. Yeah, and part of me also thinks that I think you're going to really struggle letting that go.
Well,
and I hope you don't.
Yeah,
But
I mean, for me, that's the supernatural power of God, is the inward change that has happened in me that is completely against my natural tendencies. That and there's a why. Like, why would I want to spend an hour having a conversation and listening to someone that I 2 years ago would have vehemently disagreed with? Why would I bother doing that if I don't have a greater reason and a greater purpose? It's a waste of time. I'm better off arguing with them and spending an hour with someone that I do agree with, right?
Yeah.
But I think what's happened over to my purpose, I believe, is starting to become a lot clearer for me in day-to-day living, and the podcast is one very simple manifestation of that, and there are many. So I have a massive, massive issue with organised religion and the formal sort of institutional church, and I think it's done, this is a controversial statement, but arguably more harm in the world than good. And it's burnt a lot of people with flat out bad doctrine that's not biblical. And there's hills that I would die on in terms of some of that doctrine that I disagree with. So I actually think that me as a, on the surface, right-wing conservative Christian that should have no place in having cordial discussions with people that have been ostracized their entire lives, but all of a sudden here I am having those conversations, even though I'm not a naturally loving or patient person, is the best possible version that I can be as God's representative here on earth. I shouldn't be doing it. I'm not naturally wired to be doing it, but I think it's what needs to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important for you. I agree a little bit with Tomi, but I think this newfound humility is important.
Yeah. I mean, the gospel, the word gospel, it means the good news. Most people think the gospel is bad news, because they've had people yelling at them their whole time that they're sinners and they're going to go burn in hell.
But you thought that.
I know.
A month ago.
And it's been a great change. And
But why did you change?
I just got closer to the scriptures. I got closer to my relationship with God. I started foregoing my own desires and starting to think more about what's my purpose on here.
So
what does God want me to do?
So what about one of your first or second guests was like a guy that lived in Tassie maybe, or
on the old pod.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you were to talk to him again, like he was
Jason.
Is it Jason?
Yeah. I sent Jason a message last week.
Like, you were pretty aligned with him at the time.
Yeah.
So you couldn't be further away now.
Yeah, that's correct. So,
because I remember talking to you, if I can just have the mic for a sec, I remember talking to you, having this conversation, say 2 years ago, and you and Jason believed that I don't even know what you call these people, the Lucifers and all that sort of. Is that the right term? That people that
Luciferian.
that run the world, deceiving us at every turn. Everyone's fooled. We're all part of a matrix. It's like, okay, if you think that, then what is the point? Because
there is no point.
Exactly.
There's no world.
And I remember saying, like, well, why, mate? Why even bother getting out of bed if everything that in life and in world is out there to get you and just deceive you? And how are you meant to? How do you bring up your kids? How do you send them to daycare? How do you send them to school? Like, when everything out there is, but you've changed on that
completely. Yeah.
Well, good. Welcome back.
Yeah, it's, and I think I touched on this earlier in our discussion, right? But well, I didn't touch on this, but I don't believe Adam was the first. I don't. So I have two positions: the start of the Bible and the end of the Bible. Both positions have most of the Christian community throwing spears at me, right? The end of the Bible is, I don't think we're in the end times. So you ask 95% of Christians at the moment, they're going to say we are in like the end times. I don't know whether it's this decade or next, but like this probably this generation. I believe the end times were 2,000 years ago. I don't think the Bible speaks at all about the end of the world. I think it talks about the end of the old covenant kingdom and the launching of the new covenant kingdom that comes into this world. I disagree with the start of the Bible. I don't think Adam and Eve were the first humans that all humanity descends from. I think they were the first covenant family that went into covenant with God. And Adam was one of many men that exist in the nations and came into God's garden, which is sort of a metaphor for God's kingdom here on earth, to be a priest and an image bearer for God for the good of the nations. You know, he has a man on earth in whom his spirit will dwell that does his work, loves the people around him, preserves his garden, grows his family, does, you know, and overall brings good to the world, right? And the world is a good world. It's not a wicked and evil world. So I'm completely opposed to the whole institutional church at both ends of the Bible, right? So I now think I read the story of Adam as sort of an example of what I'm here to do. I should be a loyal husband. I should be a great father. I should be a great friend. I should help the poor in my community. I should go out of my way to help those that are poor in spirit, that are brokenhearted, that have been shunned by everyone else, and show them love regardless.
Yep.
In the alternative worldview, which is,
But if you go to a Catholic church, like that's what you're taught. I mean, that's what I took out of all my time there and Catholic school and all that.
But Catholic Church is all about moralism.
Even without the religious component, I think a lot of people would love to live by that doctrine.
But
And
why?
think they would. Hey?
Why? Who are you doing it for?
Well, for yourself, for your community, for your respect in yourself and others. That's a pretty fair baseline to work off, I would have thought.
Yeah, but when the going gets tough, why are you doing that?
Well, when the going gets tough, better to do it with company than on your own. That I can assure you. So leaning into friends in your community and your family, and having a strong foundation built on respect and good values, I think will hold you in good times and in bad. So that's why I think you should carry out life under those guidelines, because I think it'll serve you in all different walks.
But what about on that hypothetical island that I was talking about with Josh, where we live in a world with finite resources.
Yep.
Everyone's trying to get their hands on those resources.
That's no different to today.
No different to today. And when you've only got $100 in your bank account and you got to pay for rent and food or whatever, why would you possibly give 40 of those dollars to someone else?
Well, you just do the best you can with the hand that you're dealt.
No, but why would you give resources away? It makes no sense. I mean, we're living through fairly rampant inflation and asset price appreciation and everything now. It's not self-serving to be loving others as you love yourself.
I disagree.
What? How though?
I'm no martyr, I'm no saint, but don't we all just feel, generally speaking, that, geez, how much better do we feel about ourselves when we give to others?
We know that.
Well, I agree.
Yeah.
That's my point. We've all got finite resources. I've got finite amount of time. I've got finite amount of things I can do in a day or in a week, and I'm limited in a lot of things. But I can give what I've got and what I've got the bandwidth to give. And in doing so, I do get a lot of life and a lot of energy and a lot of sense of self-worth out of it. And I think that's actually what, in many ways, gives me the fuel to keep on going. So I think it's a proportionate and relative thing. I think if you're looking at it in such a sense of, well, we've got, if you had 100, I think that's far too simplistic way to look at it. And I think you'll be surprised with the human spirit and the human condition in times of need where we can do unbelievably good things. We can also do some unbelievably awful things, but it's not all bad, is what I would say to you.
So Rick Welch, have you guys listened to the Rick Welch episode?
No, I forget their names, but maybe.
Yeah. Rick was great. He's the host of the Bureaus of Berea, who I went on their podcast. But Rick started doing like talks at events, and he gave a speech. It's on the internet. It's a really good one. He tells a story at the start. You'd remember the Rodney King story. Rodney King it was like the black riots in LA in 80s or something. So anyway, there's this story of all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, blacks and whites hated each other, right? It's this sort of culture war that just turned into this day of riots when this Rodney King got off or the guy that, I don't know, what was it? Something happened and that sparked these riots. And there was these black guys on the corner that basically started carjacking a bunch of cars, and then they got this guy who's driving in his car and pulled him out of his car. And this guy's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "I'm from Guatemala. Like, I'm not white." And they're like, "You look white to us." And they start like bashing this guy, and then they pour petrol on him, light him on fire. And then this guy who is a local pastor in the area, black guy, but he back in the day was like the gangster of that area, like full drug lord, and then went to jail, I think, found Christ, became a pastor. He then goes up to this guy who's literally on fire, his arm's on fire, stands in front of it. He's got this whole community of these like angry guys out for blood, and stood over him. He goes, "You guys get back. If you want to kill him, you got to kill me first." Never met this guy before, right? And he ended up saving this guy's life. And I think he died, and he was resuscitated. And then this guy ended up becoming a Christian as well. And this guy, because his past life as a sort of a drug lord, like he had sort of respect in that community, they listened to him and they went away. But why would he do that? Why would he risk his life for someone that he's never met before and be willing to lay down his life for someone? His answer was because he serves a king. You know, he serves a king who showed him how to love in a way that he never knew before.
I think there's a million examples of that, mate.
Yeah,
personally, like,
but I want to know
you'd be surprised.
I want to know the why. Why would you do that?
Because some people believe it's inherently good and right to do that. So if there's a little kid that was getting bashed by some guy, I think you'd find a lot of people would do something about that. That may not necessarily serve a king or a god or anything. Why do the fire department of New York City run into a building that might collapse? You know, why do they do that? Why do they try and help people that inevitably were never going to be saved? Like, people do extraordinary things, look, and whether they serve a high power or not, I think naturally sometimes it's actually within. So I tend to disagree a little bit on that.
So I think, and this actually goes back to the Genesis story of sort of Adam and the nations being outside the garden as well, is that I think we all have something on our hearts that we might call conscience that gives us this sort of knowledge of good and evil, right? I don't think there's many worldviews that can explain why that's so, though. Because, I mean, before I was sort of atheist existential, so I still knew that helping people made me feel good. But, like, why? There's no reason that should help me feel good. If we are basically just a ball of cells that have got here through randomness.
I think people get a lot out of doing something they know is inherently good.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is why? Like, why is that the case?
Well,
What
you like to feel good. I think a lot of people just like to feel good. It's good for the soul, good for the heart, good for the mind. I think people are obsessed with doing good things. And I think there's a natural
The same,
high from doing it.
correct. And the same why can be applied to a lot of negative things as well.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll do a lot of bad things and no, I'll be like, I don't feel good about myself.
Yep.
Because I know that that's just not right. And I think, yeah, I wish I had a bit more faith in people.
You wish I did?
Yeah.
No, I do.
I think he does.
Yeah.
I think he's come around. He didn't. But
Yeah.
he's come back.
Yeah,
But with or without,
the traditional Christian worldview is that the flesh is evil and wicked, and humans are evil and wicked. I no longer believe that. I discussed it with Brick that we both came to the same conclusion that humans are good and humans are evil.
Yep.
We know good and we know evil. We can do both. And humans, non-Christian humans can do good. Christian humans can do bad, can do evil. And that's my biggest gripe with the Catholic Church is that it's shifted a lot of views around what Christianity is into this sort of moral code about doing good, and that's not what the Gospels are.
is it possible?
I don't think it's. I don't see it that way. It's a moral code, of course, but you live by a moral code, which you expressed as to your. What's the point anyway? So you live by a moral code. It doesn't mean that you don't break that code every now and then.
But I mean, if you're Catholic, you're going to the confession every week to confess everything that you did, which...
Have you done it?
I don't mind that.
No, I don't.
I spoke to.
I don't.
Yeah, I know. But have you done the confession? I literally spoke to someone last week, and he says he goes monthly. He says it's the greatest thing of all time.
Confession is
He comes out of it feeling incredible.
Yeah.
therapy, like modern day therapy, is a form of confession.
Correct. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
I think
So what-
I think confession is fine, and I think inherently good.
Mm.
I think it's a good thing from the Catholic Church. Personally,
It undermines the good news of the gospel, though.
undermines it.
Yeah, because it creates this idea that we're constantly in judgment from God, and actually what Jesus came to do is remove the judgment and condemnation.
Does it though? Does it come to the idea that we're all flawed and we make mistakes, and and it's a way of taking that weight and
Yeah, but
your shoulders.
I mean, this has destroyed a lot of people that have grown up in churches and then fled from them. Is the feeling that you are constantly under judgment
Sure,
can just be so detrimental.
no question. But I'm not sure if confession is meant. Like, if you look at confession
But also there's like
in its own right, I'm not sure if that's the overriding intent is to say this is to free you from judgment.
Oh, it's exactly what it is.
Nah, I disagree. I don't think it's.
When
I
was the
don't
last Catholic service you went to?
think, do you have to be like? Do you have to do confession to understand that? Do you think
To
understand that the overriding arch and meaning of it is to free yourself of judgment?
It's exactly what. I mean, it's
it's just
I don't know. I don't know if
it's just a
Catholic Doctrine 101. Go to a Catholic funeral.
not free yourself from judgment. It's just to ask for forgiveness, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh,
Forget him.
I'd say that's the same thing.
It's exactly the same.
I'd say that's the same thing. But
Yeah. Go to a Catholic funeral. Their person have died. They've done all this. They've been baptized. They've done their communion. They've done.
do you not think
Like a father to a son or a daughter.
that's right? But do you not think that
Like,
confession can also be a
Yeah.
conversation that I may not necessarily be able to have normally, like with my old man, or with my mum, or with you?
Yeah.
Because I'm
Like Amelia comes.
not worried about.
I've done this. I've done this. I've done.
I'm not worried about God's judgment. I'm worried about your judgment. I'm trying to talk to someone that might help me through that. So is that judgment from God or is that judgment from you?
Correct. Yeah. Two separate things. So
I agree.
So the Bible says to confess your sins, but to one another, right? And what it means by that, this is taken out of context, is if I've ripped you off last week, right? I now realise I've done that. And I come to you and say, well, Tommy, I'm right with God, so his judgment's all that matters. You forget about it.
Sure.
Well, then I'm not going to end up with many friends, am I? Confess my sins.
But have you been to a confession or not?
Yeah.
What do we...
When?
Confess my sins. What the Catholic Church, you confess your sins to a priest who is, in their view, the mediator between you and God. So you're confessing your sins to God through that priest.
I'll preface by saying that I'm not a part of the Catholic.
But if you were to,
cohort.
my understanding of how that would play out would be that you would come and say that, and there would be a discussion of
That's right.
what you can do about it.
I don't think
Discussion would be you should go and seek forgiveness from that
That's
person,
right.
and God will exonerate.
I think you take some liberties on that.
That's from God, which is
But it's both. It's both.
but it ain't both in the gospel, and this is the problem. It's that no, you are not under. A believer is not under condemnation and judgment from God on every single action that they do, actually on no action that they do, because Jesus Christ paid for all sin, past, present, and future, in a once-for-all sacrifice.
So therefore, I can do whatever I want, and no problem.
Well, no judgment, right?
No judgment mean I'm going to heaven. All good, happy days.
Yeah, but heaven's not like, and again, this is a problem, and this is your sort of cultural understanding of Christianity coming into it. The church, the mainstream church exists, and you can call the church the Christian church, Catholic church, whatever, to help people resist the devil and get to heaven when they die. Right? Do you disagree with that? As a sort of outsider looking at the church? I mean, go to a Catholic funeral.
Well, what do you think about your sins? Do you think you have to face God
No.
for your sins? No. At some point, you don't never ever have to answer for them.
No, because they are a mile long, and the sins that I do over the next year will be another mile long, and I can never ever do good. I can never. No, sorry, not do good. I can never justify myself before God for my good works. But what I can accept is what Christ did on that cross as a substitute for me.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
I'm lost as well.
Yeah, I mean, you might be.
But mate,
I'm just lost because I think you struggle to articulate that.
And not have to answer to that to God.
So where do we? Okay, so this doesn't mean it's not a lawless gospel, right? So there's a verse in the scripture.
So I'm either doing
We love because he first loved us, right? And faith produces good works. There's fruits of the Spirit that I've spoken about. Why do I love someone? Why do I show forgiveness for someone? Why do I do any of this? It's because God first loved me, right? So if I have faith, I'm not going to want to go and do all this bad stuff. I'm going to want to do good stuff because I have a reason for wanting to do good stuff. But I'm not doing it because I'm under condemnation and judgment for every single action that I take, which is the number one reason that most people grow up in the church, leave the church.
I have no authority on this whatsoever, and I'm not going to pretend or want to feel like I can speak on anyone's behalf, but yeah, I don't know. I feel the need to object on that a fair bit. And I can only talk about from the outside looking in, so I'll preface that. I'm not speaking from a position of authority, but I think, again, from the outside looking in, that people can appreciate that we are burdened with imperfection and we have a propensity to sin, and that we're forever going to be in the shadows of what Jesus sacrificed for us. So deep in our hearts and souls, there is a propensity to do good because without his sacrifice, we don't get to live and carry out our lives in the, and grace this earth. So things like confession and are really there as a baseline for us to keep ourselves to account and to make sure that we have a good, solid foundation and baseline to carry out the life that we feel that we need to live in his honour within that code. And I think that's an admirable thing. And I don't think it's, if people are thinking it's forever in a sense of freeing from judgment, or I think that's just a misinterpretation of the original intent of what it is about. And again, if I modernise it to like a modern day therapy session, I think a lot of it is us projecting on ourselves about leaning more into what we want to be, which is more inherently good than bad. Not necessarily, and I think also helping us hold ourselves to account and to be accountable and responsible for the actions that we've taken. Not so much deflecting or necessarily asking God for forgiveness.
I mean, my pushback, I got no issue with confession of sins and wrongdoings. Should be doing it. We should be, when we do wrong.
What about confession to talk about any like struggles or how I'm feeling? I'm too afraid to tell Luke about how I feel about where we're at in life, or, what do I do about that? Like, I just don't think it's necessarily as black. I think it's far more nuanced in terms of, and I think people's day-to-day struggles are far more nuanced than, I hate my job, or I don't want to live in this state, or, like, it's far more nuanced than that. And again, I think that's an extension of the church, confession, the conversations that we'd have anyway. Wouldn't you agree?
I absolutely agree. So I think the confession of sins, the admission of wrongdoing, is a great thing to bring into our lives. I think it's Socrates wrote like a life examined. Great thing. Should examine your life. Should examine your last week. What did I do? What did I do poorly?
Just on that, do you believe in therapy?
What do you mean believe in therapy?
I'll give you a hypothetical. Say Vic said, I would like to go to couples counselling. Would you be okay with that?
Yeah, we've done like 2 sessions in our life, I think, and it was good. Because talking through things is good.
Yep.
And I think sometimes having a third party intermediary is good when an impasse has been reached, or even when it's not, because we all have blind spots.
Mm.
So yeah, I've got no issue with it. I think I have a lot of issues with modern psychology and modern medicine in general, and the approach that they take. But so when you say, do I have an issue with therapy? I am all for people having discussions and bringing different perspectives and looking at things from a different lens. Does that mean that I'm all in favour of the modern psychology class? No. I think maybe that's
like a modern day Jordan Peterson. You object to someone like him?
Let's not go. No, I mean, Jordan Peterson's not a... Is he... I mean,
clinical psychology.
I think Jordan, he'd be more aligned. He'd be more aligned in most of the way he thinks to you than not. But I know what you're saying about modern. Yeah. Modern.
Yeah, I
sort of you talk and nothing.
Correct.
No, at some point you got to plant a flag in the ground and.
Yeah. I think they run pretty good businesses. Great business, subscription model business.
Never-ending issues.
Yeah. And you got a lifestyle problem. Here's a pill that can fix... Do I need to change my lifestyle? No, but here's a pill that can fix it.
So where to from here? What
this discussion or for life?
I think it's a bit of an end note. How have you found the discussion? Have you?
I'll start. I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed it. I think that I said at the beginning, like there was an element of me listening to the pods where I wasn't sure actually where he was in all of this anymore. I sort of didn't know where he stood. But I'm a lot clearer on that. I think we align a lot more. I think there's more room for robust but curious discussion as opposed to just this is my view, that's my view, you prove me wrong, no, you prove me wrong sort of way of thinking. So
Which is culture now.
hey,
And it just doesn't work. So, I mean, Rick and I discussed this as well, that you read the Bible particularly the New Testament account, and it's a recollection of actual things that happened. But it's like we're reading it on like 2.5 speed. It's key points. It's sort of 3.5 years of events and then sort of 40 years of events afterwards that are spoken about. And it's, I don't know, like what, 28 chapters. Like, it's not an overly, you could read the New Testament in a couple of days, really, if you set your mind to it, on 70 years of events, right? So it's like key points that have happened. Now, I think what people can do wrong is think that the Apostle Paul walked into a town and just said exactly those words there and, take it or leave it, and off he went. And then he got on a boat and sailed from, Rome over to Philippi in Greece and said the same thing there. The reality is he would have gone to this town and been in this town for 3 months and got to know the people and had conversations and learned their culture and then spoke to those people on and at their level, right? When we just project our views and yell at people stop listening to us before we even got through our first sentence. So what I've learned a lot through doing the podcast, through just day-to-day life, particularly over the last year or two, and even from the last couple of hours chatting with you guys, is that the better I can get at listening to people and understanding why they believe what they believe, understanding why they are in the position that they're at right now, the better I can share my views around, maybe they need to, have you considered this? If I just go at them like a bull at a gate from the start,
A gentler approach is going to hold you in good stead.
yeah,
For sure. But I think the appetite and the thirst to dig, and to dig with the sole purpose and intention of, hey, let's get closer to the truth than where we currently are. I think that can only serve you positively. I agree, maybe a gentler approach and not as robust.
but it's just come from a point where you preface it by saying, I could be wrong. Whereas 12 months ago, Luke was, I will die on the hill for this. Like there is no wrong. I am right. And you can't convince me, no matter what you have to give me otherwise.
Mm.
Oh, there's been some, if I could recall, and if I could rehash some of the messages we've exchanged, where some of the conversation was like, listen here, I'm telling you how it is, only I can teach you. You have nothing to give to me. You can't teach me anything. You can't give me anything. If you want to listen, I'm here to help. But if you don't, well then, you're no good to me. Like those sort of conversations. I wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah, well, they're probably not effective.
But now, are they right? You've come around.
Yeah, I mean, I think I talked to you.
You have died on that hill
to a lot of people.
And why is that?
Well, because there's a lot of background and history between us. So I'm I've had 15 years.
You got to look, mate. He's the person you've known longer than anyone. Why don't you have it with him?
You get a little bit lippy on some of the.
So it's okay.
But this goes back to cult. This goes back to the culture conversation, right? But look, I think you're a natural sort of. I think you enjoy adversarial discussion too, which is sort of strange because in a lot of your life you don't.
Yeah,
go the other.
I think I do. I think,
But you just
to be perfectly honest, I think I do with you.
Where are you?
Strangely.
You know why? Because I know that.
Some cans.
I think I know what it is. I think about this a lot, and this is a good little end for me. It's a great little end for me, but I have an insatiable appetite to appease anyone and everything.
Except for me.
But I know that when I've got someone like you who, you know, we know and love and trust each other in the sense of you can say some despicable things to me and I know it's coming from a place of love. And I think you know that. So I think you know you can get away with it as much as I know that I can get away with it in return. So I think it becomes a bit of a...
Self-fulfilling.
Well, not self-fulfilling. I think it just becomes a safe place to really just throw anything and everything.
Yeah.
And I think it's enjoyable. I think it's, as I said, I think it's some of the best conversations I've ever had are in those moments. Yeah. And I think that's what gets lost in everything.
But we also have those conversations. I can't think of the last really strongly adversarial face-to-face conversation we've had.
I don't think we've had one.
It's like you just...
I don't think we've ever had one.
Oh, you're both the same. Sorry.
Yeah.
You're exactly the same.
What do you mean?
Oh, well, I know what he was going to say.
What do you mean?
There is something...
What was he going to say?
About the medium of WhatsApp, Twitter.
Totally.
What do you think he was going to say?
I think he was going to reference you as the roided up digital version of Tomi, but that can easily be Luke too.
I think that comment was Luke projecting on himself.
But look, this is an account of, this is not for the audience, this sort of stuff, because it's...
I think they can follow.
It's in
No, I think there's a clear takeaway for the audience in that the world is so online now. So many conversations are on Twitter, are on WhatsApp, are forwarded, and you lose all the nuance, you lose all the personality that comes with it. And at the end, you get what we've got now, which is this sort of culture war with everyone just hating each other. I see evidence of it now. I can have a podcast with someone. I'm trying to get a girl on who's like left-wing Aboriginal feminists, but I actually reckon we could chat and have a really good conversation for an hour, But if we tried to send each other text messages, it'd likely end in an impasse really quickly. So I do think the world needs to get back to more conversations and actually discussing things with each other, because text messages, WhatsApp, X, where it's faceless and you lose any of the personality when you're typing something up, it's not a good medium for disagreeing.
But so podcasts though, mate, they're not like podcasts aren't challenging, are they, in their nature?
I think they can be.
They can be, but I haven't really... You don't hear too many of it.
Why does it always need to be challenging?
It doesn't need to be challenging, but I think in a lot of these, like we can all hear different sides. There's going to be, for as many stories that are over here, there are stories over here. I don't know. I just think... It doesn't necessarily have to be a debate. Maybe on certain topics, you can have like a people from either side. It would have been through early days of COVID and that sort of thing. Like you would have loved to have heard just two people on either side of the vaccine sort of debate that were reputable, having a good discussion about it. But you just
still don't think we've seen it.
But I think this is all by design.
Yeah, possibly, and
it's all by design.
Yeah, probably. But even in the sort of smaller cultural issues, having two people that can both listen but also insert their views curiously, rather than just listen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Totally.
And in a podcast, often it's just listening. You're just there asking questions and you're listening.
Oh, mate. I've thought about Luke a lot in that moment where I've seen Luke contend something, want to say something about whatever the topic is, whether it's faith or COVID and before even discussing it or providing any form of dialogue or sense of position on anything, I've seen people's responses before even a word is uttered, where it's just incomplete disagreement or just an absolute lack of want to even discuss anything anymore. And that's what troubles me. And I worry a lot.
So there's what I've found is, so I mean, I can still hold pretty strong views. Like that hasn't changed. I don't think it'll ever change. And there's plenty of times where I will be talking to someone, and this could be on the podcast, it could be in person, where I'm like pretty certain that I'm right on this point and that they're wrong, right? But what I've learned that I can still get out, and I would have previously, and I would have done this with you plenty of times in the past, but like I can get, there's nothing I'm getting out of this conversation because I just know that they're wrong, right? What I've picked up on recently is that I can actually still get a lot out of that conversation, even if I'm certain that I'm right, by listening and getting a better perspective and understanding of why they think that. Because if I really listen for why someone...
Is that serving them?
Yeah, I think it can
Really?
be.
So they're serving something that you know is wrong.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah, because if I've listened to them...
Are we not in the pursuit of truth?
Yeah, but...
And if we are, why are we condoning that?
Because we've just discussed that people having conversations just being yelled at and told that you're wrong just has not convinced anyone.
That's what
I've got no...
You're working...
Luke,
Again, you go to the either extreme. It's sort of...
I've got no interest.
My point is like curiosity and understanding is great, but then also if you know something is wrong, being able to insert that in the conversation in a respectful manner.
I've got no desire in being agreeable, and I've got no desire to stand by listening to someone who you know is wrong and letting them just sit in that. I think you deep down would agree with me on that. And that's what I've found a little bit troubling. Not troubling is not the right word. Just a little bit sort of like, I wish you would hone in on that and sort of say, hey, look, I'm in complete disagreement with your position. I totally respect it. I understand it. But I'd like to explore this a bit further because I'm very strong on this. And to be honest, I could sit here and agree with you and just finish the conversation. We can both walk on our merry way. But it would be remiss of me not to explore this further with you.
So the last episode I did, I don't know, you probably haven't listened to it, was with this guy, Jacob, who is Christian and works for this ministry called First Fruits of Zion that are a pro-nation of Israel ministry at basically all costs. They are so focused on what they call the Jewish roots of the scriptures, right? And, you know, I'd say they're almost, I mean, if you listen to it, like almost like besotted by the history of Israel and the Pharisees of the time and their entire hope in the future is all bound on a return of the people of Israel coming back to the land of Israel, and then coming to faith in Jesus because that's the only thing that can bring the kingdom of God to earth, right? I can't explain how much I disagree with his position, and I've had debates with his colleague online heaps, and I was like, one of you guys needs to come on to the podcast and actually just discuss this with us, right? I am not in a 1 hour conversation going to convince this guy that he's wrong. He might live another 50 years and not be convinced that he's wrong because
You might convince your audience that he's wrong.
maybe.
So he might.
No, but where I'm getting at with this, right? So I had this guy on and we had an hour conversation. And this is a hill that I would die on, is the 1948 version of Israel has absolutely no significance to the biblical story, right? Now, that's probably 70% of Christians believe the total opposite. So I've got Jacob on now. In my mind, I can't learn anything from him. I'm certain that he's wrong, right? But in him coming on and listening to him, there was a couple of points that he raised that helped me to better understand why he holds that position. Now, in doing it, and that was like a little aha moment for me. I didn't learn anything in terms of, oh, hang on, they've got this part right, and maybe I need to look into that further. I'm like convinced there's not that. But by actually listening to this guy, not being super adversarial with him, I asked probably more challenging questions in this one than I have in any other episode.
Who is this with, sorry?
Jacob Fronsack, the latest one.
Yep.
But he gave a few answers that helped me to understand why he believes what he believes. So his entire hope around, the point of life is basically to hope for a better world, which he believes comes with a visible second coming of Jesus in the clouds after Israel accepts Jesus as Messiah. And at that point, he'll be resurrected from the dead and go to this heaven in the clouds with, golden altars and roads and so forth, right? In his mind, the only way that happens is if the Jews get back to the land of Israel and we embrace them and we help them to see Jesus as Messiah. So there's almost nothing you can say to this person that will be defamatory or negative around the land of Israel now. So I got a better understanding of, there's actually no point me jumping on Twitter and debating with someone saying, hey, read this passage here. This isn't talking about 1948 Israel. This is the Israel of first century, and that all finished and came to an end in 70 AD. So by listening to that person and not trying to debate them, because there's 1,001 debates online in Christian circles from two polar opposite camps, and they totally disagree with each other. They yell at each other. It's a big ego battle, and they finish and no one really gets anything out of it. By really understanding the reason why someone holds the view that they do, I can use that in future conversations with them to understand, what's the point that I need to sort of attack is the wrong word because I've just spoken about not being adversarial. But what's the point I can focus on and say, have you considered this? If I haven't listened to why that person holds their view and really deeply understood that, then I don't know what perspective to go at to start to shift their opinion. Does that sort of make sense?
It does. I still go back to the overriding objective of the pod, which, and again, that might have shifted from seeking truth. Because if it is seeking truth,
I don't think it is
that contravenes it. Because then you basically what you're doing is you're appeasing conversation and finding a level of comfort in the conversation to understand, the adversary in the discussion. But you're not getting any closer to the truth whatsoever. If anything, you're actually letting it fester. And I think that just goes against the actual objective in the first place. And I think just letting that linger, part of me just feels that, I guess it just doesn't sit well with me as much as it would just trying to find a level of comfort in the conversation. That's just my position on it. And knowing you, I thought, I'm surprised to hear that. But again, that just might be part of the evolution of Luke McInnes.
Definitely. Well, it's been a great chat, gents.
It has, mate. We should do this more often.
If we do, though, I propose a new topic.
What is it?
New topic for the pod. Because what's the point anyway, I feel like is great, but inevitably a lot of it's the same answer.
It's a good point. I just think what's the point in seeking to...
My question that I'm more interested in now is what keeps you up at night? That is the question that needs to be answered. What keeps you up at night?
Should we end on our short little answer?
No, we can't have a short little answer here. But I think that would be, if I was to start this podcast again tonight, right now, if we were to do this again, I'd like to start on that, and I'd like to have almost like its own therapy session. I think that.
So the premise being, this is what keeps Josh up at night, and let's talk about that to try and find some sort of cathartic means to help him deal with that.
Correct.
I like it.
Understanding, everyone's issues, what they're going through, how they deal with it.
No, I think you're right. I think it's really good.
I just think, like, coming here tonight, upon reflection, like, it's always great talking. It's always great talking to you guys, but I feel like we've only scratched the surface. And there's a lot under the hood, and
well, that was the reason for my pod. Was
correct.
I mean, yeah, we have sat here for what, a few hours,
2.5.
And do I really know more about you, Josh? Do I?
Do you? I don't know. I think you know me pretty well.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot that I just wouldn't know.
I think you know me
that I would
almost as well as I know myself. But in terms of the nuances of my life and the challenges and what I think about day to day, I think there's a lot there that we could lean on each other a little bit more.
I look forward to that. Maybe
lean on each other.
Pencil that one in, Luke, and we'll explore that.
Guide our way through.
Might be a little offshoot from what's the point.
Sounds good.
Appreciate it, fellas. This is nice.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit like and subscribe to get notified when the next episode is live.